Today we're going to talk about the E word. Nope, not a sparkly vampire that has really good hair. No, I'm talking about editing your videos. Are you disappointed? I am too, a little, but we'll have to save our Twilight themed video for another time because, like Edward, editing can feel kind of stiff and awkward, but it doesn't have to. In this video, I'm going to give you quick editing tips that will make editing feel fun and exciting. Let's get into it. Hello creators, I'm Ben Tolson from Podia, where we empower creators like you to make a living doing what you love. When it comes to producing video content, every creator has parts of the process they love and parts they don't. For many, editing is one of those things that feels more like a have to do than a get to do. I think the reason for this is that many don't see editing as a creative act. It's chopping and cutting and trimming, and you don't normally associate these words with creating. I want to reframe this for us, and so I'm going to do that by splitting editing into two distinct categories. When I make videos, I go through a rough edit or a first pass edit. Then I go back and I do a more detailed edit. The rough edit is all about lining up clips, removing unnecessary footage, and cutting bad takes. The detailed edit is where I get to add titles, graphics, sound effects, screen recordings, and other more fun, creative things. I think where a lot of creators get hung up is trying to do both of these editing modes at the same time. So the first tip is to separate your editing modes. Yes, the rough edit is still somewhat tedious, but I like to think of it as setting up my canvas. The goal is to leave only the essential content. This is where you're doing most of your cutting and trimming, and I get through this as quickly as possible, and coming up, we'll talk about a few different ways to do this. Once the rough edit is done, I switch to creative mode, and now my goal is to make the video interesting and engaging. Because I don't have to worry about cutting or trimming, I can let my imagination go and have fun. Nothing is off limits. Not even sparkly vampires. So that's tip number one, separate your editing modes. Now on to tip number two. And just so you know, these next few tips are going to be about adding speed to the rough edit because we want to glide right through that, like Edward gliding through the forest. You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey. Tip number two. Write a script or an outline. One of the best time-saving tips is one you can use even before you turn your camera on. Writing an outline or a script can dramatically reduce the number of takes, and it can keep you from getting off topic. One of the downsides of working from an outline, and especially from a script, is that you may sound more scripted. One of the ways you can overcome this is to write out what you plan to say, then record yourself reading it aloud. When you listen back, you can make notes about adjustments you could make or words you could change to sound more like your authentic self. This also does take a bit more preparation time, but the time you'll save in the editing process will be worth it. Tip number three, use keyboard shortcuts. Most editing programs come with preset keyboard shortcuts you can use for things like splitting clips, making markers, speeding up playback, and more. Most of the time, you can easily find these shortcuts in the program preferences. In the case of Adobe Premiere Pro, which is what I use, not sponsored, there's a keyboard shortcuts link in the main menu. Saving 1 second using a keyboard shortcut instead of your mouse may seem insignificant, but over time, you're actually saving yourself hours. Learning and practicing the existing keyboard shortcuts is great, but what can be even better is setting your own. For my rough edit, I use custom keyboard shortcuts that allow me to press E to move the playhead to the cursor, W to play forward, and Q to ripple edit the clip back to the previous cut point. With these custom keyboard shortcuts, I can blaze through my rough edit faster than a coven of vampires strolling through a field in the Pacific Northwest. That was another Twilight reference. Tip number four, clap to mark takes. This time-saving tip takes advantage of the audio waveform, which in most video editing programs you can see just below your video track. Just looking at the audio waveform, you can probably already see places where you had extended silence, maybe repeated the same sentences, or even that spot where you were shouting at your kids to be quiet while you were recording. It happens. For this method, I like to use 1 clap for a bad take and 2 claps for a good take. So if I get started on a particular section and mess up, I can clap, start over again, finish the section, clap twice, and move on. It's gonna be so confusing later. And then when I'm editing, I can see the claps in the waveform and cut out the bad sections without having to watch through the entire clip. Tip number 5, Edit in reverse. This is a tip I got from YouTuber and video professional Caleb Wojcik, and it's brilliant. So we're not talking about playing the clip in reverse, but we're talking about starting at the end and playing through the last section. The reason this tip works so well is that in most cases, the last take of a section is the best take, or the one that you want to keep. And then combine this with the previous tip of clapping to mark your takes. Let them know, Bella.
You're impossibly fast.
The tips I've mentioned so far were about speeding up the rough edit so you can actually enjoy the rest of the editing process. These last few tips are going to be about making your detailed edit fun and exciting, but also fast. Tip number 6. Collect your assets ahead of time. If you know you're going to reference a book or a film or something like that, save the artwork and import it into your project before you start editing. If you know you're going to need certain sound effects or music, try to find it and import it ahead of time. The less you have to search for things while you're editing, the easier it's going to be for you to get into flow. This will not only make the edit go more smoothly, but it'll also be more enjoyable. Tip number 7, use preset templates. If you tend to use the same transitions, text layouts, or graphics, save them into a project template that you can use each time you start a new project. For my workflow, I always have a base template I work from that includes all of the titles, transitions, and graphics I use for each video. I open my template file and immediately save it as the current project. Once the project is done and saved, I save it again as the template file, delete any elements I don't need in the template, and then resave. This way, any extra sound effects, titles, or graphics I've added are included in the new template. Using this method over time has given me tons of great material to work with that I can just grab from my project folder and incorporate into my videos without having to go searching. Unfortunately, this is the first time I've used Twilight clips in a video, so I did have to go searching for all of those. But in the future, the sky's the limit. Tip number 8, take a B-roll break. Sometimes as you're editing, you'll find that there's a section that's not as engaging as you'd like for it to be, and still images and text just aren't doing it. This may be a great opportunity to take a B-roll break. Is there some sequence of shots that might work well over what you're saying? Maybe you're talking about productivity and you could use shots of you writing in a planner. Maybe you're talking about routines and you can use shots of you making coffee. Maybe you're talking about staying active and you can use shots of you and your family playing baseball in a field somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. A B-roll break allows you to step away from your edit while still staying in a creative mode, and it's just a fun thing to do. Tip number 9, polish last. Our final tip is about what not to do until the very end. If you're like me, as soon as you drop your footage into your project, you want to apply color correction and see the final shot in all of its beauty and glory. As satisfying as that is, it does slow things down and it takes you out of the creative editing mode you need to be in to make a really engaging video. The same goes with audio. You might be able to hear things you need to adjust in the volume or EQ, but try to wait until the end to make those adjustments. Hey, Stephanie Myers makes the rules, not me. Once you've finished your detailed edit, you'll know which clips you're using and which ones you're not, and you'll know which sections don't need color correction because there are other clips or images on top of it, and you can apply color correction or audio correction much faster. This is also a great opportunity to do a last watch through of your video to make sure there isn't anything you missed. And those are our expert tips for video editing. I hope you found them useful. Which one of these tips are you going to start using right away? Let me know below in the comments. And if you have tips we didn't mention, please share them. If you found this video helpful and you want more content like this, click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll be sure not to miss any future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.